Hello there, very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, on this Tuesday evening. Of course, we are going to do as we usually do, that is to examine the current issues in the political, social, and economic spheres of our country. Most of you know the most topical issue being discussed, or the major issue the government is addressing at this point in time, is that of the widespread flooding across many regions, many communities in our country. Of course, we will also discuss a little bit this evening about the vaccination drive, the COVID-19 vaccination drive of the government, um, to ensure that we protect the people of this country, and of course, some of the other political matters. I'm expected to be joined a little later in the program by the Honorable Zulfikar Mustapha, Minister of Agriculture. He is in Berbice, with the President, His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali, who is conducting a nationwide flood assessment exercise. And of course, we're going to be joined by Minister Mustapha, hopefully a little later in the program, so that we can talk about some of the activities of His Excellency today in the Region 5 area, and some of the other plans in terms of touching some of the other communities. So, without any further ado, I get straight into the program to speak a little bit, because we continue to see a lot of misinformation as to what is happening with regards to the flood situation in our country. And we've been making the point repeatedly. Repeatedly, we have been making the point that the situation in this country is not, it's a natural phenomenon. We keep repeating this over and over. Despite this, you have some people still trying to make politics out of a situation of this nature. So what you find some of the folks in the opposition going out there trying to change the narrative, trying to create all sorts of confusion, diversions. And let me give you an example. When one looks at Harman's outreach a few days ago, I think about 2 or 3 days ago, Harman went into some villages on the west bank of the Demerara earlier last week, and you know met with a couple of people. He promised to return with some hampers for them on Thursday. I think sometime Sunday he returned with a few small bags. Harman, on that return, you know, claiming that residents told him that the PUP has been bypassing villages. But guess the village that Harman went into. Harman went to the village, his home village, Port. Harman was nicely dressed, nice fancy shoes, clean jeans, and everything. And he was in this quote unquote flood hit Port. Incidentally, strangely, comically, the village that Mr. Harman went into, there was absolutely no water. So Harman is claiming that the PEP bypassed Port, and they didn't give Port any hampers, despite the people suffering as a result of the floods. But guess what? There isn't a single evidence of any floods where Harman was. So I don't know exactly, and this is the kind of cheap politics. This is the kind of stupid behavior of people like Harman and the others, where they go and they try to play politics out of everything. The reality is, the government of Guyana, the People's Progressive Party civic government, has been moving across this country. Ministers have been to almost every community affected by the floods to ensure they make assessments and to make timely interventions, to ensure that we support the people. This is not about politics. This is not about who you voted for. This is not about your geography. This is not about your ethnicity. This is a situation where, as a country, we are faced with a phenomenon. We are faced with a natural disaster on a huge scale. If you go into the communities and the locations that are affected by the floods, you will understand the magnitude of this. And we cannot be playing politics with people's lives and people's livelihood. So going and to a community that is not flooded and try to play politics will not work. The other issue that we recognize, a lot of these guys are talking about, trying to somehow blame the People's Progressive Party, a party that's been in government just over 10 months, somehow for the flooding. Look, this is not a time to blame anybody, and we shouldn't blame anybody for this. The reality is, this is as a result of global warming. This seems to be the evidence of global warming. And up to last evening, I was watching a short video where you have similar situation, even on a larger scale, worst in many countries around the world. You're seeing flooding in the Philippines, in China, I think in Afghanistan, if I'm correct, in Spain, and you name it. Many countries are facing the same problem. You have a very unnatural phenomenon in Russia. You have flooding in parts of the US. And I'll bring you closer to home. You have flooding in Brazil, in Manaus, just over the border, where, and I think if I maybe I should just read a little bit of what the story said, because I was reading the story last evening um, in Manaus. So it says the residents in Manaus, the biggest city in Brazil's Amazon rainforest, are struggling to cope with severe flooding after heavy rain caused nearby rivers to swell. The Rio Negro River, that's the Rio Negro River, reached its highest water levels since records began in 1902. So more than 100 years, this river has reached its highest, and the depth, with a depth of 29.98 meters or 98 feet. So if you, it's simple. A quick search of Google are going to show you what is happening. Imagine nearly 60 of the 62 municipalities, sorry, in the Amazonas state have been affected on a larger scale, a worse scale than what we are facing in Guyana. So for persons to try to play politics, try to blame people for this is not a time for that. We want to know what the people like Harmon and the others are doing. And when you check the rhetoric, when you check the lies and misinformation that are coming from so many of them about what is happening, they look, they attempted to use the narrative that the People's Progressive Party Civic is responsible for this situation. That didn't work, because quickly we were able to debunk those lies, those fabrications, by showing, and I just did, by showing that this phenomenon, this disaster that we're facing here as a country, is not something that is unique to Guyana, that is happening in many other parts of the world. And what is important, and we keep saying this over and over, what is important in these situations is the manner in which you respond. And the government has managed to respond tremendously. The government has managed to reach out to communities to ensure that help, that relief are brought to people. And that is what is important. We couldn't. I mean, look at what is happening in places like Kwakwani. Look at what is happening in places like Mahaika. Look at what is happening in Region 7 and so forth. It is difficult for us to really prevent because of the swelling of rivers in neighboring countries, etc. It was difficult, and it is difficult for us to respond or to be able to prevent the situation. But what we know is that as a government, the People's Progressive Party Civic has responded, and has responded with speed to the people, to their needs. Let's take His Excellency, the kind of leadership that he is providing during this crisis. Look at what he has been doing. The president has been moving across this country to every single region he is trying to touch where there is flooding. He was in Region 2 recently. He went to Region 7. He went to Region 3. He went to Region 6. Today he was in Region 5. He went to Region 10. He is trying to touch every single region, every single community as much as possible that were affected, to ensure that And if you look there, you're going to see the photos of the president today in the Mahaika, Maikoni area, where he met with residents, he met with farmers, and he's been asking and trying to reach out to them to see what assistance as a government can be provided. And that is what responsible, that is what a caring government does. Not to sit and to hide and to not respond. This is, look, there were floods under the APNU AFC when they were in office. It will be interesting for you to see, to do your research, to see exactly the manner in which they responded. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely. We're reaching out to rice farmers as a government. Matter of fact, in the absence of a flood, when rice farmers were facing problems with their paddies and to get sale, to get the market, Granger said the rice industry and that's a private business. Government is not into the business. But we have been reaching out to rice farmers even before the floods and even now. Not only rice farmers, cash crop farmers, cattle farmers, every single person, every single household, as much as possible, to ensure that we protect livelihoods and that we protect lives. And at the same time, that we make the necessary investment to ensure that we get the water off the land. It's a process. And I keep saying, importantly, as a government, we have been able to respond and to respond with great speed and to really reach out to people and to hear what are the issues affecting them and really deal with it. And and this process is being led by His Excellency, the President. This process is being led by His Excellency, the President, who has been touching communities. Like I said, the President spent considerable amount of today in the Maikoni, Mahaika area, in the rivers, meeting with people, meeting with farmers, listening to their concerns, making the necessary interventions. The same thing in Region 2, the same thing in Region 7, the same thing in Region 10, the same thing in Region 6. So, and I'm making these points because, you will hear very soon, and you're hearing already, the claims that the government is discriminating against people and that the government somehow is skipping communities and is not focusing on every community. That's the farthest from the truth. That is the kind of lie that you hear coming from the opposition because they have no substance. They have no meaningful contribution to make. This is a national issue. This issue crosses political, racial, geographic borders. It is beyond that. So to hear and to see the kind of rhetoric, and I deliberately made those points because I wanted to touch on what I'm seeing. So let me give you an example of how small-minded, how cheap is the talk coming from the opposition who really have nothing to offer, who don't care absolutely anything whether the people of this country suffer. So apparently some private company donated a quantity of rice to Gaisuko based on what I'm hearing to distribute to sugar workers. So Gaisuko received a donation of rice, I understand, to give to sugar workers. They distribute the rice. Apparently, APNU get a small group of their supporters and to start play up the race card to say that the PPP and the government is going everywhere else and give people large hampers. But they went to this group of Afro-Guyanese cane harvesters in Alna's village and gave them a bag of rice. And they're talking, and APNU and Granger and Harman and his surrogates are talking about widespread discrimination and PPP favoring its stronghold and PPP discriminating against Afro-Guyanese. That is the kind of rhetoric that you hear coming from this cabal. So they're not taking anything to people. This is a private business decided to make a donation. And you're seeing this repeatedly. Repeatedly. Herman went to Port Royal where there's absolutely no flood. No water on the land. There's absolutely no picture to show water on the land. But Herman went to that community To do what? To distribute hampers. I want to see Harman in Kokwani. Let's see Harman go to Kokwani and take relief to the people there. The government has been working around the clock in that area in Region 10 and has been working with the RDC of Region 10, an RDC controlled by Harman and the PNC. But the government has been ensuring that it provides the support to the NDC, to the RDC, sorry, to ensure that the people in Kokwani and wherever in Region 10 that are affected, that they benefit, that their lives and their livelihoods are protected. I want to see Harman and I challenge him to go to Blackbush Pola where the farmers are suffering. I challenge him to go to Maikoni and Mahaika where we have ministers of the government every single day are in those communities. Every single day, reaching out to people, reaching out to farmers, reaching out to residents to ensure that they provide support. Don't go to the West Bank or some dry community and walk around with a fancy shoe and try to tell people that you are providing support and that you're there because they're discriminated against. This is the kind of people you're dealing with. And what do? They choose an Afro-Guyanese community, and I will say it. They choose an Afro-Guyanese community that is in the first place is dry, absolutely no water, and they go there and they start with the racist rhetoric because that's the only card they can play. The government, the response of the government has been tremendous, and we have been meeting out to people trying to address their needs and their concerns. So no longer Harman and his gang can go and use the response of the PPP government to the flood. So what do? They go and they start to talk about discrimination and about racism. That is how they are. That is the kind of beast you're dealing with. And I saw the Attorney General made a statement today, and this is a completely separate issue with regards to GCOM. And the fact that the chair of GCOM asked the three riggers, Mayers, Lowenfield, and Mingo, to show cause why they should not be dismissed for attempting to rig the elections. And the Attorney General highlighted how elements, how these elements in the opposition are trying to use race. So I understand that the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Zulfikar Mustapha, has managed to join me. Minister, good evening. I've been waiting for you quite a while. I know you've been quite busy today, like every other day, across you accompanied His Excellency today to Region 5 to touch with those communities that are affected. Um, just tell us a little bit about the outreach and what are some of the issues highlighted and how the government has been responding.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and I want to say a very good evening to your viewers out there. Right step just out from the Mahika Maikoni Creek, where we've a number of these, where the water is extremely high, where we are going, and this is first-hand look that His Excellency the President is making. I myself went there earlier this week on a Monday, made some intervention, and then today the president is in the creek to look for sand and see what we can do more to help the situation in those communities. As a matter of fact, since last Saturday, we have been traveling different parts of the country. The president. Last Saturday, we were in the Cayuni Mazaruni area. We visited a number of communities there. The water level is very high. Of course, the immediate task of the government now is to ensure people are fed, people have a shelter, they have medical attention, and they have clean water. That's the immediate concern and the immediate task of the government. And last Sunday, we went in the Pomeroon. We visited all the communities. The president, myself, the minister of local government, and other officials from NDIA. We visited all the communities in the Pomeroon, and the president reassured residents that the immediate task of the government is to ensure that we deal directly now. The short-term intervention is to ensure that we provide different stuff for them to ensure they take care of themselves now. And in the medium and long term, we develop plans to enhance their livelihood. As a matter of fact, with the flood that have been taking place across the country, many farmers and many persons' livelihood have been threatened, and many of them have been destroyed. And the president is reassuring citizens that the government will intervene, the government will provide help so that they can go back and start once again, so that they would not be left alone, left by themselves, but the government will ensure that the farmers at least go back to the land. All the farmers, those persons who would have lost their livelihood, will return to various occupation at the end of this period. This is a very difficult period, and I overheard some of the points he was making. Places like Kwakwani, Blackbush Polder, Region 8, El Paso area, the Cayuni, Mazaruni, we went to Jawala, we went to Camarang. Those areas are seriously flooded out. As a matter, in Region 9, number of houses have been washed away, area have been flooded out. So all these areas, members of cabinet and officials from the government has been visiting regularly. All the members of cabinet, I am happy to say, have been going out across the country. We have been making serious intervention to alleviate the problems. As a matter of fact, as I'm speaking here tonight, I am very, very happy to note that in a number of areas, the water have receded, and people are once again returning to normalcy. Um, the CDC have been providing valuable support in delivering hampers. I myself were involved, myself and Minister of Local Government, we were involved in the distribution of hamper into many parts of the country. Um, Last week, Friday, I went to Ithaca myself, and a number of persons received hamper in Ithaca, and I have footage to show. I went in Manchester, I went to number 53, I went to Belladrum, I went to El Dorado. I am calling these areas besides areas that traditionally I normally go to. Why I'm calling these areas? Because it shows that we are not discriminating against anyone, and we are providing the support. We are providing the support to residents and citizens across the country so their life can be returned to normalcy once again. Like tomorrow, the president will have a fan out in Region 6 where he will visit a number of communities. He'll have interact with residents because he wants firsthand what has been going on in Region 6 for the last week, because in areas in Region 6, the water have been receding, um, very promising. Places that were inundated now are dry. Water is high in the drains and some canals, but most of the yards, most of people's residence are dry now. So I note that tomorrow the president was in Region 6 before. He's back here to find out from himself for himself, to see firsthand, to do a follow up. What are the conditions of those persons whose residents were flooded out over the last 2 weeks? So that is real leadership. That leadership we're talking about. It's nothing about rhetoric. Nothing like, for example, we went in the Cameroon. We went to a place called Hackney. Hackney traditionally supports the opposition. And the president had a mammoth meeting there. He talked to them, made a number of interjections. He ensured CDC will be taking hampers in those communities. He's ensuring that the regional health authority in Region 2 go there and provide medical. He also instructed that the health authority can do vaccination for the COVID vaccine. So all these measures have been put in place simultaneously on the spot decision that His Excellency have made over the last few days. I have been traveling with him across the country, and this will continue. This will continue. You know for a fact that the president went to Kwakwani, and he made an intervention in that area. and a number of ministers have been going out there. Minister Edgil, Minister Vindhya Prasad, and other persons have been going to those communities. Myself have been going out. You know for a fact that I have been finding out right across this country, almost all regions, and because the sector I'm heading, many persons depend on this sector uh, to ensure that we give the kind of leadership there too. So although I have been going with His Excellency to various areas, I myself have been doing my own outreaches country, and people are very welcome these initiatives that we are doing. People are very responsive to our outreaches. People are looking forward for leadership, looking forward for guidance, and that is what we are providing as a government. We are not going and just talk politics. We are not going to use this disaster to for cheap politics. We are going there to make changes in people's life. For example, I went to good fortune. I went to the Canals Polder. I went to the entire west bank of Demerara. So I will continue to find out. Tomorrow we will be going to Manchester. The president will be going to Manchester. He will be going to number 53, Firish, besides other communities across Region 6. So it shows the way we have been doing things. We have been ensuring that citizens across the board, across the country, are provided with the necessary facility, the necessary input from government so that they can return to normalcy.
And interestingly, Minister, before you join me, I've been talking about what we as a government have been doing in terms of responding to the floods. And I have dealt with the whole issue of the fact that the opposition seem to still be sleeping. They seem to be far behind. They're still in a bubble. They somehow think that a natural disaster of this magnitude is something that you should be using for political gains. You can't.
Yeah, right.
You can't. And so you have them talking, they attempted to use the disaster to say the PVP has failed you, so you're flooded. We have managed to respond to that and to debunk that narrative by showing that this is a natural phenomenon that is taking place in other countries. So what have they turned to now? They're narrow and their only trick in the book, which is racism, to accuse the PVP of of discriminating against Afro Guyanese and against their supporters. And I made the point about Harman going to Port Royal where there's absolutely no water, and you have the likes of Shar Duncan and the others using an occasion where a private citizen, a business I understand, donated some rice to Gaisuko, which they distribute to sugar workers. And they're using that to say that Afro Guyanese sugar workers are only getting a bag of rice, while other sugar workers are getting full hampers, and other Guyanese are getting. And this is the kind of narrow mindedness that you find coming from an opposition that claims it has the interest of people at heart, while the
Yeah, well,
PDP has been working overnight to try to address the concerns of people.
those guys, they are so shallow because they can do anything. For example, this guy Sherrod Duncan, I don't think this guy is using sometimes people's sickness to make fun, to make politics of, right? These are so cheap they are, and we have to be very careful. And even let me be very frank now, the APNO does not have any traction, even in their own support base. I went to Ithaca as a government to develop that community. And I will share with you just now, I will share with you just now a clip from Ithaca. When I spoke to the citizens and the residents of Ithaca, the reaction they have, the reaction they show, because the people are interested in the development of their community. They are interested in the bread and butter issue, how they could feed them family, get find money for the family, and also to earn. And we as a government, we are providing the necessary input. For example, Ithaca was a thriving farming community. Over the last 5 years, that farming in that area has become a non-existence. I made a commitment that I will help the farmers. We'll do the kind of infrastructure. We'll make that community once again a thriving agriculture community, like what we are doing across the country. Over the last 10 months, we have seen renewed interest in the agriculture sector. This came about because of the input that we have made in the agriculture sector, the budgetary allocation. And let me tell you, Eddie, from last year, August to now, the number of infrastructure that we have put in place, if wasn't for those infrastructure, then Guyana, this flood that we are experiencing today, I don't think we could have even come out of this situation. Because when I took over the Ministry of Agriculture, the entire we had clogged canals, impassable dams, and broken down infrastructure. And I had to go to cabinet with emergency release before the budget to do works in a number of areas. So much so that today we are having better canals, we are having better infrastructure, and as you rightly said, since 1981, we have not seen the amount of rainfall that fell over the last few weeks. So this here is a 30-year record that we are having rainfall of this amount now, right? And the drainage system has been put under stress, and because of the high amount of water, in the system, we are having water now going on the land. The backland water is putting a stress on the drainage system. But I want to say, when things are going good, it's been sabotaged also by the opposition. Their town council, they are not using the infrastructure that we have provided in the city, capital city. This year we have placed 3 additional pumps in Georgetown. We have NDIA have placed pumps at different points in Georgetown, and the operators are not operating the pumps. When the president himself went and caught them sleeping, so nobody supervising anyone in Georgetown. And because why they are not doing it? They want the problem to occur in Georgetown. They don't care if their supporters, so-called, what they call themselves, that they got areas in Georgetown who are supporting them. They don't care if the people flood out, right? The president was on the road 12 o'clock in the night checking the pumps. Which president ever do that? Right? So the point why I'm trying to make is that this government is taking the interest of the people at heart. And it's coming not only from certain members of cabinet, but it's coming from the leader itself, from the president himself, right on to all members of cabinet and other officials of government. So this is the kind of way we are trying to work. And you will see when they speak, the rhetoric they will use the flood village. And people like Ramjet and they will say that, but we didn't neglect, because government only for 10 months. The neglect took place in the last 5 years prior to August of last year. Those, and across this country, for myself, in my sector, people said that the Minister of Agriculture was an excellent government. They never saw him, they never knew why, right? And now they are seeing us. We are interacting with them. We are almost talking to them on a daily basis. We are having regular outreaches. We are having weekly meeting with the people at our offices, open days, when farmers and other stakeholders can come and meet with ministers and deal with issues. That is the kind of partnership that we're talking about. Sit down in our offices, warm seat, and just relax and just money. We are working around, like I just came from with the players of cabinet and ministers are out in the field. People are days working in the interior regions of our country to give support to the community. That's the way we have been doing it, and we'll continue to do it. And Eddie, I think that I am very, very optimistic that what we are having now, the unprecedented rainfall, the high water level, it will come to an end shortly, because we are putting measures in place. And I think that we will be working with each and every community across our country to do the medium term and long term planning, so that in the future we can prepare. And as Minister of Agriculture, I also want to say I've been working with various farmers that we have to do things in a different way. We can't as we normally do it before, because for a climate change taking place, we have to do more smart agriculture practices now. And I think that that's the way we will go. And Guyana will take its rightful place once again, not only in the region but on the world arena, to be the agricultural powerhouse in these parts of.
Minister, I am happy. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy that you were able to report to the nation that we're seeing a reduction in the water levels in some community. The water is receding. I mean, I understand the struggles of many people, and I want to. I cannot allow you to go unless I raise the issue of what we experienced in Region Four during this flood, that the people of Region 4 escaped any flooding whatsoever as a result of investment by the People's Progressive Party civic government. Because had it not been for the Hope Canal, then we on the coast here, especially in the Region 4 area, would have faced the full force of this rainy season, and we on the coastland, Region 4 area, would have felt the real impact of the heavy rainfall and the rising, the high tides, etc. But the Hope Canal investment, this is the kind of investment that a government with a vision, a government that understands the needs of the people and understand to make the right investments to protect lives and livelihood will undertake. For 5 years, APNU hasn't looked at anything of that nature, despite them seeing repeatedly floods in other regions. The fact of the matter is, all of us on in Region 4, especially on the East Demerara corridor and in Georgetown, save and except for what the attempted sabotage, have escaped the full force of the floods. I don't know if you're still there, Minister. I'm seeing as though you're frozen. Um, I think because of your location, because of the weather, you may be facing some difficulties with your internet, or maybe because you're using your phone, you may have gone off to a call or so. You're the Minister of Agriculture. This is a difficult time for your ministry. You're on the call, so we understand if it's a case where you're attending to the needs of people. But the minister also mentioned the fact that we are in difficult times, and in these difficult times, nations with leaders, with visionary leaders, and leaders with the interests of people at heart, try to rise to the occasion and try to provide the kind of support necessary to ensure that lives are protected, livelihoods are protected. We can safely say in the People's Progressive Party civic camp, we have leaders who are doing that. We have the minister mentioned just now that he has been traveling across this country on many occasions with the president. I saw today Minister Alan Prasad is in Region 1 making assessment. Minister Colin Crowell has been moving all over the place. Minister Nigel Dharamlal, I think, is in Berbice, if I'm not correct. He was in Region 2. And the list goes on. Minister Edgil has been working around the clock with Region 10, Region 3, and all the other regions, like Minister Zulfikar Mustapha. So you have a government that is working, and this is a good test to show how your leaders have your interest at heart. This occasion, I mean, it's tragic, it's sad, but it also allows us to have a good sense of the commitment of your government, that His Excellency has been out in the fields, his ministers would have been out in the field, the Civil Defense Commission has been out in the field, and every single stakeholder of this People's Progressive Party civic government would have been in the fields, working in communities, working in regions to ensure that this issue is addressed. I want to take the opportunity, because we're quickly running out of time, to address a couple of other issues. One being the issue of, and this is until I get Minister Mustapha back, if he is there, the situation that we have in our country. I think dealing with the flood is something that we have to spend a lot of time on to ensure we explain to people, so that people understand that the challenges that we're facing are not challenges that we created, but are rather challenges that are unavoidable. However, the manner in which we respond to them is what is important. I also want to just briefly mention the fact that you've had uh, more vaccines in the country. Another 100,000 doses of the Sputnik V arrived yesterday. So um, the idea is to ensure that we get as much people as possible vaccinated. Um, and again, this is something to protect you and your families. So I would encourage people to go out to get your vaccines. Um, Let me tell you, and I keep saying this repeatedly, look around the world, look at the figures, and you will see there isn't a single case. There's absolutely no evidence of vaccines hurting anyone anywhere. The fact of the matter is, when you look at the figures with the COVID 19, look, today the Ministry of Health reported several, I think 6 persons died over a 2 day period, over a 48-hour period. And they died as a result of COVID 19. They haven't died as a result of the vaccine. And we've said it, while the vaccines will not protect you 100%, what is important to note is the fact that the vaccines will ensure that even if you contract the virus, that you don't get seriously ill, and that you don't end up in the hospital. And who knows, maybe you don't have the luck and you die. You have the vaccine, you may contract the virus. It's not 100%, but the fact of the matter is, you're, you're guaranteed that you will not get extremely ill, um, like persons who haven't had the vaccines. It's available. Don't listen. Look, you have access to the World Wide Web. You can do the research for yourselves. You can gather the information and you can make the assessment of the vaccine, and you will know how important the vaccines are, and you will know the success rate of the vaccines. Look at what is happening in New York. Look at New York, for example, where they are now moving back. That state is now moving back to some amount of normalcy, and it's as a result of the widespread vaccination. I've seen videos, I've seen photos of people now going maskless as a result of vaccination. And look at the figures. Look at the figures. Um, I can pull it up here for you. I'll get the timeline, and I'll tell you. If you look at what has happened within the last few days, you will see that the COVID 19, there hasn't been any reported deaths. The infection rate is extremely low, and I'm going to look at today, if I can here. So today is what? If I get right up here, there has been, as at the fifth of as at the 5th of June, you had 852, and this is a country with so many people. As at the 2nd of June, you had 9 deaths, and these are cases of persons who actually um, were ill even before and maybe haven't taken the vaccines. The fact of the matter is, we're seeing thousands of deaths in the US, especially in New York area. And today, those numbers are down. Look at China and look at many other countries. You will see the rate, and it's as a result of vaccination. So again, I want to encourage you, my dear brothers and sisters, please take your vaccine. This is the only thing. This is the only way out. I saw a letter, and I keep referring to that letter repeatedly, that vaccines, vaccination, it's a letter in a local newspaper by a doctor. And it was a global picture being painted that vaccines and vaccination is what will take us out of this pandemic. So I encourage all of you to please get vaccinated. This is where I will wrap tonight's program, but I just want to say to you again that we are facing a serious situation with the flooding. The pandemic is now compounded by the flooding, and you have a government that you can trust, a government that is working in your best interest, a government that has your interest and the interest of your family, the interest of your livelihoods at heart. And it's being demonstrated by this government, as you're seeing our ministers His Excellency, every single member of the cabinet, and all the leaders and in government are there providing the support, visiting the regions, meeting with you, coming to your community, try to find solutions to your problems, to the issues that you're facing, to ensure that together, regardless of what the critics are saying, regardless of what is coming from the naysayers, that together as a nation, forget your politics, together we can pull ourselves out of, first and foremost, in the very near future, this flooding, and that going forward, we will, and I can assure you that the government will make the necessary and right investments to move us to a place where maybe these kind of threats and challenges are reduced, are minimized. Um, I also want to encourage you again to take your vaccines. This is our only way out. So, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Zulfikar Mustapha, unfortunately, um, had to leave us, I think, because of some challenges with his internet. He's in Berbice on an outreach, which is with His Excellency, and so I apologize for his premature departure from the program, but I want to thank him for joining us and for sharing with you, our viewers, what has been happening and the response, the tremendous response from this government to address the woes, the challenges as a result of the floods. And again, I want to thank you, our viewers, for being part of the program. We'll be back with you tomorrow evening. Until then, we say thanks for watching. Remain safe. Those of you who have reached the age, please get vaccinated. Have a good rest of the evening. Bye for now.